Welcome to today's special episode of Crypto News Alerts. In today's show, Bitcoin sees CPI volatility as lower inflation sends the Bitcoin price action to $18,000. I'll be breaking down the latest technical analysis. And this just in, massively breaking news, FTX founder Sam Bankman-Fried has finally been arrested and said to be extradited to the U.S. That's right, the Royal Bahamas police have arrested SBF at the request of the U.S. government based on a sealed indictment, which has officially been unsealed this morning. Charges against Sam include conspiracy to defraud the United States, violation of campaign finance laws, wire fraud conspiracy, securities fraud conspiracy, and money laundering, which can serve a sentence of up to 165 years in prison. Now check this out. Congressman Tom Emmer calls out Gary Gensler, says Gary knows that FTX was fraudulent from its inception. This is egregious considering he had more meetings with Bankman-Fried than anyone in the space to discuss a crypto regulatory framework designed to benefit FTX alone. He will be held accountable. Also in today's show, SEC charges FTX CEO Bankman-Fried for defrauding investors a day after his arrest. The SEC filed charges against SBF, accusing him of defrauding U.S. customers and concealing the diversion of customer funds. Also, the CFTC files a lawsuit against Bankman-Fried, FTX, and Alameda for fraud. According to the federal regulator, SBF and FTX companies use FTX customer funds for a variety of personal expenditures, including real estate and private jets. Also in today's show, hours before his arrest, Bankman-Fried denied being a part of a Wirefraud chat group. That's right, SBF's latest tweet before his arrest for allegedly committing wire fraud was denying his involvement in a group literally called Wirefraud. You can't make this stuff up. Also in today's show, Bankman-Fried planned to blame everyone but himself, shows leaked Congress testimony. That's right, SBF blamed the current CEO, his legal counsel, the law firm he appointed for bankruptcy, and the Binance CEO CZ without admitting any wrong on his part. We'll also be taking a look at the overall crypto market. All this, plus so much more, in today's show. And welcome everyone tuning in to today's show. This is live, of course, and today is December 13th, 2022, pod episode number 1132. And I am your host, JV, and we have lots to cover. So let's dive right in, taking a look at the overall crypto market. As you can see, is pumping. Finally, about time as Bitcoin hits 1 month highs. We got Bitcoin up almost 5% for the day, currently trading above 17,700 at the time of this live stream. We got Ether up almost 6%, trading back above $1,300. We also have Matic up 5%, trading at 93 cents, while Binance Coin, the only one in the top cryptos, currently correcting and in the red. And checking out coinmarketcap.com, we can see the current crypto market cap sitting at $871 billion with $52 billion in volume in the past 24 hours. The current Bitcoin dominance on the rise at 39.2%, with the Ether dominance at 18.6%. And checking out the top 100 cryptocurrency gainers in the past 24 hours, Toncoin leading the pack up 11%, trading at $2.33, followed by OKB up 9%, trading just under $23, followed by Lido DAO up 8.5%, trading at $1.10. Below that, we have Avalanche and Near Protocol. And checking out the top 100 crypto gainers in the past week, we can see Ton leading the pack up 29%, STX, which is synthetic, no, that's actually Stacks, Block Stacks, up 17%, and GMX up 8.8%. And checking out the Crypto Greed and Fear Index, we're currently rated at 27 in fear, the same as yesterday. Last week was at 25, and last month at 22 in extreme fear. So there you have it. Welcome once again to everyone just tuning in. Let's dive right into today's Bitcoin technical analysis, and then we'll dive into everything you need to know regarding FTX and Sam Bankman-Fried and his arrest and potentially facing up to 165 years in prison. The Bitcoin hit a new 1 month high December 13th as U.S. inflation data sent a surge of optimism throughout the markets, which was much needed to say the least. And as you can see here in the Bitcoin 1 hour candle chart, data from Cointelegraph Markets Pro and TradingView showed Bitcoin hitting 18,100 on Bitstamp after the CPI print for November came in below expectations. The readout, dubbed the most important of the year, even beat analysts' expectations on inflation slowing down. So November CPI was 7.1% year on year compared to the 7.3% forecast, and month on month was 0.1% versus the 0.3% expected. Now the all items index increased 7.1% for the 12 months ending November, December. This was the smallest 12-month increase since the period ending December 2021. An accompanying press release confirmed. The Bitcoin traders and analysts were surprisingly buoyed by the injection of positivity, which resulted massive short squeeze on its way in the market. Popular analytics resource Gamma Trades responded in part of a tweet prior to the Wall Street Open, and a more conservative reaction came from Crypto Capo, who told followers that he still not planned Bitcoin exposure despite the gains. Quoting him here, CPI better than expected, but still very high. Price is testing a massive resistance zone here and forming a lower high. I am still 100% out of the market. And similarly cautious was Feja, an analyst at crypto research firm Reflexivity Research, who warned of deflationary panic yet to come. We now enter the complacent Goldilocks phase of inflation, he announced. CPI coming down faster than expected is bullish up until it turns into a deflationary panic in Q1 2023. Final low around then, and then bullish into 2024. Enjoy you long gains, but don't miss the forest from the trees. And as reported, this week is set to contain more than just CPI numbers, with the U.S. Fed due to decide on December's interest rate hike, and the Fed Chairman Jerome Powell to speak December 15th, which is just 2 days away. And according to CME Group's FedWatch tool, consensus was for a lower 50 basis point hike on the day, with the odds at just under 80% versus 75% at the start of the week. Now let's discuss the controversy surrounding Binance. Bitcoin USD had meanwhile performed well even before the CPI release, showing no hint of cold feet in the face of fresh panic over events involving the largest crypto exchange, Binance. Dubbed FUD by CEO CZ, concerns appearing in Reuters and other social media nonetheless sparked an exodus of user funds, which totaled over $500 million in Bitcoin alone in the past 24 hours. And in other events associated with the FTX debacle, the exchange's former CEO was arrested, which we're going to be diving right into. But first, I do have a few questions. Do you trust Binance? Isn't it interesting? Bankman-Fried committed all this fraud. Fortunately, he's finally been arrested. Again, I'm going to be breaking down all these juicy details. But isn't it interesting that the lamestream media is coming after CZ and Binance? Many are anticipating that they will be next to be attacked by the SEC, and that CZ could even potentially get arrested. It's wild, and this is like the Wild West. But what are your thoughts? Do you feel that Binance is safe, or do you feel that they are next to be attacked by the regulators and potentially, even go down? Let me know your honest thoughts in the comments below, which leads us to the moment we have all been waiting for. Everything you need to know about Bankman-Fried, his arrest, the sealed indictments, all that good stuff. So let's dive right in. Bankman-Fried had been arrested by authorities in the Bahamas at the request of the U.S. government just a day before the disgraced former FTX CEO was due to testify before Congress. Timing is everything. Now, isn't it interesting? He gets arrested right before he is set to testify. Bankman-Fried was arrested by the Royal Bahamas Police Force following a formal notification from the U.S. government that it filed criminal charges against him. And according to a December 12th statement from the Bahamas Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs, Ryan Pinder, citing a person with knowledge of the matter, the New York Times reported December 12th that the charges against SBF include wire and securities fraud, conspiracy to commit wire and securities fraud, as well as money laundering. The U.S. will likely request the extradition of Bankman-Fried, with Pinder stating that the Bahamas will promptly process any extradition requests. Now, Bahamian Prime Minister Philip Davis said in a statement that both countries have a shared interest in holding accountable all individuals associated with FTX who may have betrayed the public trust and broken the law. In a December 12th tweet from the U.S. Attorney Office for the Southern District in New York, said authorities in the Bahamas arrested Bankman-Fried based on a sealed indictment it filed that it plans to unseal in the morning. And speaking of this unsealed indictment, which was actually unsealed this morning, here's what it says. Conspiracy to defraud the United States is one of the 8 charges: violation of campaign finance laws, wire fraud conspiracy, securities fraud conspiracy, money laundering, and he can face a potential sentence of up to 165 years in prison. Now, Bloomberg reported December 10th that prosecutors from New York, FBI agents, and regulators met with FTX's lawyers to discuss the documentation that investigators want to obtain. The U.S. Department of Justice was closely examining whether FTX improperly transferred hundreds of millions of dollars around the same time as the company declared bankruptcy on November 11th. Bahamian authorities were similarly undertaking their own active and ongoing investigation into FTX, as announced on November 27 by Pinder, that involved the country's Securities Commission addition, the Financial Intelligence Unit and the police's Financial Crimes Unit. Now, Bankman-Fried's arrest comes a day before he was expected to appear remotely to testify before the House Committee on Financial Services in a hearing investigation for the collapse of the exchange. So there you have it. Now, this is quite interesting. Tom Emmer, congressman, in response to this here, from the inception of FTX, Bankman-Fried diverted FTX customer funds to Alameda, and he continued to do so until FTX's collapse in November of 2022. And he responded to this, and he even tags Gary Gensler and says, Gary knows that FTX was fraudulent from its inception. This is egregious, considered he had more meetings with Bankman-Fried than anyone in the space to discuss a crypto regulatory framework designed to benefit FTX alone. He will be held accountable. So there you have it. Do you agree with Emmer that with the congressman that the SEC chair, Gary Gensler, is the sole one to be responsible for allowing these shenanigans to occur and over 1 million investors to be defrauded by FTX and Bankman-Fried? Hey, that would be a massive victory, to say the least. But let me know your honest thoughts in the comments right down below. Now let's break down and continue the saga as it unfolds with the SEC against and versus SBF. Here we go. United States SEC has filed charges against SBF, the former CEO of now bankrupt crypto exchange FTX. The SEC charged Bankman-Fried with violating the anti-fraud provisions of the Securities Act of 1933 and the Securities Exchange Act of 1934. The SEC's complaint seeks injunctions against future securities law violation and prohibits Bankman-Fried from participating in the issuance, purchase, offer, or sale of any securities except for his own personal account. Now, SEC charged Bankman-Fried for orchestrating a scheme to defraud equity investors in the FTX trading, as well as the regulatory body noted that the former CEO concealed his diversion of FTX customers' funds to crypto trading firm Alameda Research while raising more than $1.8 billion from investors, quoting SEC Chairman Gary Gensler. We allege that Bankman-Fried built a house of cards on a foundation of deception while telling investors it was one of the safest buildings in crypto. Hey, Gary Gensler, you're just as responsible as Bankman-Fried. You know what I mean? Now, the fresh charges against the former CEO come just a day after his arrest by Bahamian authorities at the request of the U.S. authorities. And just hours after Bankman-Fried's arrest, the SEC announced they were preparing to file charges against the FTX co-founder, which will be separate from the ones leading to the most recent arrests in the Bahamas. And now let's discuss the CFTC filing their lawsuit against Sam, FTX, as well as Alameda Research for fraud. The U.S. Commodities Futures Trading Commission, better known as the CFTC, also filed a lawsuit against Bankman-Fried, FTX, and Alameda Research, claiming violations of the Commodity Exchange Act and demanding a jury trial. And according to the court records filed December 13th, the Southern District in New York, the CFTC filed a complaint for injunctive and other equitable relief, as well as civil monetary penalties against SBF, FTX Trading, and Alameda Research. The complaint alleged that SBF personally directed FTX execs to set up features allowing Alameda to use crypto exchange as a line of credit for its lenders. Contrary to Bankman-Fried's representations and without disclosures to FTX customers, Alameda and FTX commingled funds and freely used FTX customers as if they were their own. That's right. You would literally upload your crypto to the FTX exchange and would immediately send it to Alameda, where they would trade your crypto. Now, this is wild. Check this out. Quoting CFTC on info and belief, Bankman-Fried and his parents and other FTX and Alameda employees use FTX customer funds for a variety of personal expenditures, including luxury real estate purchases, which we know he purchased over $100 million in real estate in the Bahamas alone, private jets, documented and undocumented personal loans, and personal political donations. Authorities in the Bahamas arrested Bankman-Fried December 12th following criminal charges being filed in the U.S. The two countries have an extradition agreement. The U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission also filed charges against SBF December 13th, alleging violations of the anti-fraud provisions of the Securities Act of 1933 and the Securities Act Exchange of 1934. So there you have it. And did you also know that hours before his arrest, Bankman-Fried denied being a part of a Wirefraud chat group? Yeah, that's wild. Actually, he was on this Twitter space and they were talking about this and they're like, yo, he was also a part of this Wirefraud chat group. And then he says, no, I deny it. I'm pretty sure I wasn't a part of this group whatsoever. So I actually called Bankman-Fried out on this and I asked him, this is literally like an hour before his arrest. I said, how can you be so sure when you weren't so sure about literally anything and you claim total incompetence. How could you be so sure you weren't a part of this Wirefraud chat? And lo and behold, let's break this one down because this is absolutely wild. And again, you can't make this stuff up, folks. Check it out. Here we go. Wirefraud chat. Merely hours before the news of his arrest by the Bahamian police, Sam took to Twitter to deny his involvement or knowledge of the secret group chat named Wirefraud, which allegedly involved former FTX and Alameda ranking executives. In a December 12th response to a report from the Australian Financial Review, Bankman-Fried used Twitter to deny involvement in or knowledge of a Wirefraud group chat on messaging app Signal, which reportedly including members of Bankman-Fried's inner circle, including FTX co-founder, as well as FTX engineer and former Alameda CEO Caroline Ellison. Now, the report said the chat was used to send secret info about FTX and Alameda's operations in the lead up to its failure. Bankman-Fried, however, said on Twitter that if the group chat was true, he wasn't a member and was quite sure it's just false, as he has never heard of such a group. And like I said, I called him out for this straight up. And until very recently, Bankman-Fried was expected to appear remotely before the U.S. House Committee hearing December 13th to explain the collapse of the FTX exchange, but he was taken into custody by Bahamian authorities December 12th to face U.S. charges that reportedly include wire and securities fraud and money laundering. Committee Chairman Maxine Waters confirmed later on December 12th that the panel will not be able to hear SBF's testimony hearing due to the arrest. Bankman-Fried he requested to attend a separate hearing on December 14th with the Senate Committee on Banking, but had never confirmed his attendance, and that's supposed to go down tomorrow, but obviously he is arrested. So with his lawyers reportedly refusing to accept a subpoena compelling his testimony, according to a December 12th joint statement from Senators Sherrod Brown and Pat Toomey, and Chief Reconstructing Officer and FTX CEO John Ray, in written testimony released ahead of his appearance at the House Committee hearing, said FTX customer assets were commingled with Alameda funds. Facts. And Ray asserted that Alameda used client funds to engage in margin trading, which exposed customer funds to massive losses, and the trading firm's business model required it to deploy those funds to various exchanges, which were inherently unsafe, to say the least. I mean, it's good to finally see this dude get exposed and finally to pay some of these consequences, because once again, 1 million investors have been defrauded from literally tens of millions of dollars, with hundreds upon hundreds of companies being affected drastically by the actions of this fraudster. So, I mean, it's about time that the legal hammer come down raining. But I mean, who knows what's to come out of all of this? I mean, now let's discuss his actual leaked testimony. And it wouldn't surprise me if Caroline Ellison started to rat on him as he is ratting on her, and they're all ratting on each other. So, which leads us to our final story of the day. SBF planned to blame everyone, but himself showed leaked Congress testimony. Former FTX CEO Bankman-Fried was arrested December 12th, the day before set to testify before Congress remotely, and a copy of his testimony obtained by Forbes highlights that the disgraced CEO planned to blame the spectral downfall of his $32 billion empire on everyone but himself. Way to take accountability, buddy. SBF continued the same rhetoric about FTX US, the sister company of the global crypto exchange. In his testimony, he claimed that the US-based entity was still fully solvent, despite it being a part of a Chapter 11 bankruptcy filed on November 11th. As Bankman-Fried wrote here, "I wish I had not clicked on a button on DocuSign at 4:30 a.m., leaving some FTX under destructive leadership," and went on to blame the inclusion of FTX US in the Chapter 11 bankruptcy on John Ray III, a restructuring lawyer who assumed the role of FTX CEO after the bankruptcy filing. SBF claimed that American customers were protected, at least until Mr. Ray's team took over. Ray, on the other hand, has been very critical of the former FTX CEO and his mismanagement skills. In his testimony for the FTX investigation hearing, Ray said that in all of his years of working as a restructuring lawyer, he has never seen such a utter failure of corporate controls at every level of an organization, from the lack of financial statements to a complete failure of any internal controls or governance whatsoever. So shots fired. This is going to Gary Gensler. How did you allow this? Oh, you were in on the fraud. That's right. In the leaked documents, SBF also blamed the inclusion of FTX US in Chapter 11 on bankruptcy law firm Sullivan and Cromwell. While Bankman-Fried himself signed the bankruptcy documents, he claimed that the law firm pressured him to file Chapter 11 documents and wrote, "I have 19 pages of screenshots of Sullivan and Cromwell. Mr. Miller and others, I believe, were influenced by them, all sent over a 2-day period, pressuring me to quickly file for Chapter 11. 2011. Now, SBF also attacked the general counsel for FTX US, Reen Miller, accusing him of being a part of the pressure group that wanted to include the US-based entity in the bankruptcy filing. And apart from Ray and his legal aides, SBF was also going to blame Binance CEO CZ for what he claimed was a month of sustained negative PR on FTX. He claimed that Binance knowingly signed the letter of intent to buy out FTX, but they never intended to go through with the deal. So there you have it. And actually, before we get into the live Q&A, let's check out the latest from what's going on in Congress right now, because this is still going on without SBF. So here are some things which have been shared. I'm going to be quoting CoffeeZilla. I wonder if you would support changing the name of crypto Credo P currency. It said Representative Cleaver. Oh, what? He is making jokes during the investigation. Another interesting thing, the committee hearing is embarrassing. Someone just asked about Dogecoin. These people are clueless about crypto. And former U.S. committee testimony said, I am worried people will view SBF as a snake in the Garden of Eden, but crypto is a garden of snakes, said Rep. Brad Sherman. Yeah, this is getting heated to say the least. Also, FTX bankruptcy CEO John Ray III testified there was no distinction between FTX and Alameda Research in terms of governance. And John Ray III says FTX was unique because there was no record keeping whatsoever. And keep it in mind that SBF's parents were compliance lawyers. And I'm going to leave you with this. FTX used QuickBooks for their multi-billion-dollar operation in accounting. You cannot make this stuff up, folks. It is literally a joke. It sounds like it, right? But there you have it. What are your thoughts surrounding all of this controversy continuing to unfold? And of course, as more of the latest comes out, I'll be sharing that and keeping you updated with what's going on crypto Twitter, as well as here on my channel and on the podcast. But what are your thoughts surrounding all of this? What do you think's likely to come out of all of this? Do you think this is going to give a green light for the regulators to go after CZ and continue attacking centralized crypto exchanges? Or do you feel this could be a good cleanup for the crypto industry? And do you think Bankman-Fried is likely to face any of those 165 years prison sentence which he could be facing up to? Let me know in the comments right down below, which leads us to our live Q&A. I want to give a shout out to everyone just tuning in. Welcome Bring Facts, welcome BitBud, welcome Bitcoin Trini, good to see you, Chuck Strickland, Plugo, welcome Jeff S, welcome Juan Romero, always a pleasure. Digital Dankness, great to see you here in the chat as well. Good to see my fam here. Reg, good to see you as well. He says, I think we have just seen the bottom. Maybe we will drop back to the bathroom briefly before continuing, but the bottom we have seen. So there you have it. The bottom is in, he says, at 15,500. I know many other analysts are expecting us to continue heading downwards as we continue here in December, but let me know you guys what you think in the comments below. Bring Facts says, I bought every dip and pump for the past 3 years weekly. You can't scare me. That's what's up, man. Much respect. Keep stacking them sats. Not my keys, not my cheese. That's correct, Jeff. Preach it from the rooftops. Let people know. Plugo says, I'm not a fan of Binance, but it is totally a gut feeling. Then again, I was wary of FTX too, and kind of feel like CZ did sort of torpedo FTX. It does definitely seem that way, to say the least, as the House of Cards collapsed right after that public, calling out, Juan says Gary G should go to jail as well. I mean, if he was involved in all this collusion, which it does seem to be that way, according to, state representatives and senators alike, congressmen, he should definitely pay the consequences, in my opinion, as well. But what would probably happen, he would just be replaced by another suit. Because keep in mind, he is the chairman. He is the #1 individual responsible for policing crypto, and he absolutely failed at his job. There is no denying that. You feel me? Yeah, the House of Cards on a foundation of deception sounds like Washington, D.C. Sounds all too familiar. I agree, Plugo. I appreciate CoinFather, the super chat contribution of $9.99. Greatly appreciate that, as it helps out a lot. Juan says the SBF's prosecutors and his family living in them should be kicked out. Oh, his properties. That's right. All of the $1 million plus properties in the Bahamas, they should all be kicked out. Sell them and give the funds back to retail investors. Yeah, agreed. Bitcoin Trini says no cigarettes. Good brother. Yes, never leaving Mary Jane. I'm in love with Mary Jane. She's my main thing. Yo, Bring Facts says hours before his sushi side, he said he's allergic to swimming with fish. Smash that like button. I appreciate that, as it helps out tremendously with the YouTube algorithm. So thank you, fam. Yeah, man, I appreciate that. Coinfather, that's what's up. He says, keep up the great work. No bottom, not in. Much love. And also want to give a shout out to Digital Dankness, as I appreciate your continued contributions you've been throwing at me literally every day here on the live show. Y'all are awesome. SpongeBob says, people are so stupid. ETH and Cardano and all the altcoins will end the same way. Once Gary Gensler goes to jail, all these altcoins will have to register as securities, which is the right thing to do. That's right. And how many of these non-registered securities can afford to register, with the SEC or whatever they got to do? A lot of them will collapse and go under, which is very sad. So it'll be interesting to see. And it'll also be very interesting to see how the Ripple Labs versus the SEC lawsuit plays out. There were rumors circulating on crypto Twitter from Charles Hoskinson, the Cardano founder, that we can potentially see a verdict in that trial in the next 2 days. I think that's unlikely. I think they're going to continue to delay things and potentially even push that back to a jury trial, which wouldn't take place till summer, as I think it's been very clear from the beginning of the lawsuit, which occurred 2 years ago from today. That's right. Literally, this was back in December of 2020 when Ripple Labs went after when SEC went after Ripple Labs, and this has been ongoing. And the consequence, Ripple Labs may have to pay a judgment of $300, $400, $500 million, but they have it prepared. Their CEO, Brad Garlinghouse, says they have a war chest specifically to fight against this SEC. But the bigger question at play is, will Ripple Labs be deemed a security? Because if they're deemed a security, they're likely to give Ethereum the green light to go after them next, and they could go after Cardano. That's why Charles Hoskinson is very pessimistic about this, this lawsuit. But with that being shared, yeah, it's wild. There's a decent case for proof-of-stake chains being considered securities. Absolutely plugo. I agree 100%. Coinfather says, yeah, it needs to happen. We need 75% of the cryptos to go to zero. Yeah, sad, but kind of true. Plugo says, seems like that might be the litmus test for securities versus commodities. Welcome, Andy. He says, I heard of rumors that USDC is stable coin in trouble. Is this a fact? I thought USDC was a better stable coin. Well, here's what I know. Max Keiser, as I covered this in the previous couple of episodes, Max Keiser was recently interviewed by Daniela Cambone of Stansberry Research. And in this interview, he gives some very optimistic Bitcoin predictions for the new year, 2023. But he also says, because Daniela is pressing him and says, what are your thoughts on USDT? As there has been a lot of FUD, to say the least, in the crypto space regarding UST collapsing, being the next FTX. And straight up, Max comes out and just paraphrasing him here, he says it's not USDT Tether you need to worry about, because Tether UST is backed 1-to-1. That's fine. They have more than enough reserves to cover that. He says you need to look out for USDC, which is the stable coin from the company Circle, which is the same company behind Coinbase. Now, he is basically saying that they are doomed and that they are a target and that they will collapse because they're committing fraud and they're paying people to use their coin. I haven't confirmed any of these rumors, but I have reported upon them as accordingly as I get the info and insights from Max. I'm sharing them. So just stay tuned on my Twitter to find out, what's happening. And if you're not already following me on Twitter, my Twitter URL is twitter.com/crypto news. Yes, because Crypto News Alerts was already taken when I created my Twitter account a couple of years ago. So please do note that. And if you were to pick, which stablecoin do you trust the most? Is it USDC, or is it USDT, or is it DAI, or potentially another stablecoin? Let me know your honest thoughts in the comments right down below. And let me get back to the chat here. Chuck says, I look at it as CZ figured out the attack vector of SBF and the government and is still managing to stay a step ahead. It does seem that way. It seems that CZ is most definitely playing an intelligent game of chess, but we'll see what happens. Coinfather says Max Fudd can't take everything on his word. William O'Leary says he has changed with securities fraud, which means these are all securities. Charged with securities fraud. Well, there you have it. That's right. FTT absolutely was a security. Serum and all of these airdrop tokens he was releasing and using to manipulate the market were absolutely securities. So you make a great point. Andy says, thanks, BitBud. I'm not sure what to make of what Max said. BitBud says Tether will fail. So the opposite of what Max is hinting at. Plugo says Coinbase has some shady policies. Read your user agreement sometime. Absolutely. You can't trust and give them the benefit of the doubt for what they say in their user agreements, because FTX had a lying user agreement as well that said they would not send your funds anywhere. But meanwhile, they were taking your funds and sending them immediately to Alameda. Like that, you know what I mean? Chuck says, I think Tether was smart to launch on multiple chains to guard against attacks. Well, one thing to keep in mind, Tether is the longest lasting stablecoin, and it hasn't collapsed. It's still here. It's gone through already these cryptic bearish winters. It's still standing. So, I mean, take that for what it's worth. Again, I wouldn't be keeping I don't trust any centralized currency or stablecoin whatsoever. So short term, if I had to move to a stablecoin, no biggie, right? If I have to sit my crypto in a stablecoin temporarily, I wouldn't be so concerned. But sitting on a stablecoin for the long haul, no. We've seen what happened with UST, the Terra Luna not so stable coin. It collapsed to zero. There were people who believed in it so much because it was actually backed not by fiat but by Bitcoin, and that was an algorithmic stablecoin, and it went under. There's another stablecoin algorithmic with Tron, which as of yesterday was depegging from the US dollar. So there can be a depegging, there can be an attack. Also keep in mind something very interesting, and this was a fact. Bankman-Fried was attacking Tether and trying to depeg it. He got called out for it by CZ and by others. So why was he attacking, ultimately USDT? Why was he anti-Bitcoin? He couldn't control it, as Kathy Wood of ARK Invest shared. That's why he was against the centralized cryptos. He'd prefer creating a crypto out of thin air, airdropping it, and fake inflating its value to billions of dollars, to be using that as collateral, etc., yada, yada, yada. Fraudsters doing what fraudsters do. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, Juan Romero says the truth won't set you free until you verify. I got another quote. Yeah, the truth may set you free, but also first, it'll piss you off. Most people can't accept the truth. They're unwilling to accept it. That's why they'll protect their oppressors until their own death. It's sad, but this, my friend, is a reality. Welcome to the Matrix. Now, let's actually wrap up here. Here's a big finish. Here's a recap of what I covered with you here in today's show. We discussed Bitcoin seeing volatility as lower inflation sends the Bitcoin price action back above 18,000, with the King Crypto reaching a 1-month high. Also, I shared breaking news everyone's talking about right now. FTX founder SBF finally arrested and said to be extradited to the U.S., and the unsealed indictment includes conspiracy to defraud the United States, violation of campaign finance laws, wire fraud conspiracy, securities fraud conspiracy, money laundering, and faces a sentence of up to 165 years in prison. Tom Emmer, congressman, calls out Gary Gensler and says he will be held accountable. Also in today's show, we discussed the SEC charges SBF for defrauding investors a day after his arrest, and the CFTC also launches their lawsuit against Sam, FTX, and Alameda for fraud. We also discussed here in today's show, hours before Bankman-Fried's arrest, he denies being a part of a Wirefraud chat group, which I actually called him out for literally an hour before his arrest. And we also discussed SBF planning to blame everyone but himself, shows leaked Congress testimony. But where do you feel the Bitcoin price is likely to go next? Let me know in the comments right down below, and I look forward to seeing you on tomorrow's show.